I was 15 when my parents threw me out during the worst storm our town had seen that spring. It didn't begin with the weather, it began with a lie. My older sister stood in the kitchen, crying hard enough to make her words sound true. She told my parents I had stolen money from her room and threatened her when she confronted me. None of it had happened. I remember looking at my father, waiting for him to ask me what really happened. Instead, he folded his arms. Is it true? No. Just one word. He didn't ask another question. My sister kept talking, adding details that sounded convincing because she spoke with confidence. Every time I tried to explain, someone interrupted me. Within minutes, I realized this wasn't an argument I could win. They had already decided who I was. The rain hammered against the windows. Dad pointed toward the front door. Get out. I stared at him, certain he couldn't mean it. It's pouring. I don't need a sick daughter making this family worse. The sentence landed harder than the storm outside. My mother stood beside him. She wasn't yelling. Somehow that hurt more. She lowered her eyes instead of meeting mine. I grabbed my backpack because it was the only thing I could carry without asking permission. Nobody stopped me. The cold hit immediately. First, I walked because I was angry. Then I walked because I didn't know where else to go. The streets emptied as the rain became heavier, soaking my clothes until every step felt heavier than the last. I thought about knocking on a friend's door. Then I imagined their parents calling mine, so I kept walking. After that, everything becomes fragments, headlights, a horn, the sharp sting of freezing rain, someone shouting, then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, white ceiling tiles replaced the dark sky. My head ached. My arms felt strangely warm beneath thick hospital blankets. A nurse noticed I was awake. You gave us quite a scare. I tried to speak, only a whisper came out. She smiled gently. Don't force it. Later, she explained that I had collapsed from exposure after slipping near the roadside. A passing driver had called for help because I was 15 and had arrived alone. Hospital staff were required to notify both the police and my parents. 3 hours after my father had ordered me out, they received the call. The room was quiet when the door opened. Two police officers entered first, not dramatic, not angry, professional. One nodded politely to me before turning toward the hallway. They're here. I heard my father's footsteps before I saw him. He walked into the room with the same certainty he'd worn earlier that evening. Then he stopped. His hands began to shake because someone was already sitting beside my bed, Mrs. Alvarez, my English teacher. She had been listed months earlier as an emergency contact after noticing how often I stayed late at school to avoid going home immediately. She'd insisted I needed another trusted adult on file if anything ever happened. I'd agreed because it seemed easier than explaining my family. She stood when my parents entered. I'm glad she's awake. Nothing more. No accusations, no speeches, just relief. My father looked from her to me, then to the police officers waiting quietly behind him. One officer spoke in the same calm voice he'd used with the nurses. We need to understand why a 15-year-old was outside alone during severe weather. Silence filled the room. My father opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in my life, certainty had abandoned him. Questions followed civil ones. Who told whom? Why wasn't my explanation heard? Why was a minor ordered to leave? My sister's story began falling apart under those questions, not because anyone trapped her. Because lies are easier to invent than to remember. Small details stopped matching. Times changed. Facts shifted. Nobody raised their voice. They didn't have to. The truth arrived quietly. The police explained what would happen next. A social worker would speak with me before any decision about returning home was made. My safety came first. That sentence changed something inside me, not because I suddenly felt rescued, because someone had finally said my safety mattered. Dad tried to apologize before leaving that night. I thought he couldn't finish. I looked at him for a long moment. I know, and I did know. He thought believing the louder voice was easier than listening to the quieter one. Recovery took weeks. Going home took longer. Trust took longest of all. My sisters eventually admitted she'd lied after spending money herself and panicking. My parents expected that confession to repair everything. It didn't. An apology can acknowledge a wound. It cannot erase the memory of standing in the rain with nowhere to go. Years later, people sometimes ask why I became a counselor for teenagers. The answer isn't complicated. I remember exactly how it feels when someone decides your story before you've spoken. I also remember one teacher who crossed town after receiving a late-night phone call because she believed no child should wake up alone in a hospital. My parents and I speak now, carefully, respectfully. Some things healed, some never will. When storms roll through, I still watch the rain against my windows. Not because I'm afraid of getting caught outside, because every storm reminds me that the night I lost my home was also the night I found the first person who truly listened.